Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, we're talking about my Week 12 running back starter sits for the 2019 fantasy football season. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about news around the National Football League, a little bit of Monday Night Football review, then talking about the matchups at the running back position as we enter Week 12, then going over my top 36 running back rankings on the week. Before we begin, let me remind all of you, if you haven't yet already, subscribe to the channel. Join the community. Don't forget to click the bell notification button to stay up to date on my latest content. And if you like today's video, don't forget to click the like button. Hey everybody, how's it going? All right, hope everyone's doing well on this Tuesday. All right, so a couple pieces of information in terms of news. Let's talk about Monday Night Football because the rest of the National Football League, this is a earlier recording, so I don't know whether players are trending towards practicing or not today, but we'll talk about that tomorrow. Let's talk about Monday Night Football. Damian Williams left with a rib injury. Tyreek Hill left with a hamstring injury. Both extremely unfortunate, especially if you needed them to come up with big performances last night, which they potentially could have. It sucks, but that's just the nature of football, and it happens every week to a player. Unfortunately, it was two players on the same team on a huge Monday night game in Mexico City. So, who came in? Who produced? LaShawn McCoy, who was playing yesterday, was able to get some points out of it. Darrell Williams out of the backfield, still able to get some points. Now, the tricky part about the Kansas City Chiefs and these injuries revolves around what you want to do on the waiver wire. Now, the Kansas City Chiefs are going on a bye week here in Week 12. They're not playing. The Kansas City Chiefs, the Chargers, the Cardinals, and the Vikings are all on bye week. So the question is, are these players, Tyreek Hill, Damian Williams, going to be healthy by the time Week 13 or fantasy playoffs Week 14 comes around? That's the biggest question. So at this moment in time, if you are like a Damian Williams owner and you have the ability to go pick up Darrell Williams, I wouldn't mind that for the week. But obviously, a lot of you may be struggling for a running back and you need someone to fill in this week because they are on bye week. So you'd go and spend it on someone else. It's always a possibility. Also, same thing with Tyreek Hill. Once he was out, obviously, we saw a little bit of a boost from Demarcus Robinson, Mecole Hardman. Maybe you want to go and test those guys out. But again, they are not playing this week, so it becomes a little bit trickier in terms of what you want to prioritize on your waiver wire to make sure that, especially for those of you who have not clinched a playoff spot yet, because in the last couple weeks, people have begun clinching playoff spots by now because there's only 2 more weeks left in the fantasy regular season. It just becomes harder. Okay, so other than that, performances-wise, Travis Kelce, awesome game, did well. Patrick Mahomes could have been better. I mean, his first half was horrendous, but they figured it out. They bounced back. Phillip Rivers, playing like Phillip Rivers does this year. I mean, it's unbelievable how much he's regressed. That offense doesn't look the same. They didn't run the ball. Austin Eckler was a dominant force at the end of the first half, which was pretty much all of his stats. Second half did very little. I think he, if I'm not mistaken, he did all of his damage in the first half. Keenan Allen at least scored finally. Hunter Henry's getting some more, getting that 2-point conversion, definitely helpful. So the main pieces kind of did their job overall. But again, the injuries kind of killed the night. So it's tough. It's tough. All right. Anyway, outside of that, that's pretty much it in terms of news. Obviously, there's a couple tidbits here and there of like, players are trending in the right direction. We're gonna have to wait and see. But the most immediate game is the Colts versus the Texans on Thursday night. So be ready for that. Obviously, put in your waivers if you are looking for trying to pick up one of those Colts running backs. I know a lot of you were asking down in the comment section, like, is it going to be Johnathan Williams or is it going to be Jordan Wilkins? We know Jordan Wilkins was in that backfield before Johnathan Williams, and the only reason Johnathan Williams is there is because Jordan Wilkins' ankle injury. From what I saw, Jordan Wilkins did not even practice, I think yesterday. Was he? Yeah. Well, if he was to practice, because they're legally supposed to put forth who would practice today kind of injury report, he's not going to play this week either. So I don't know. If you're in need of a starting running back, Johnathan Williams, just saying. All right, let's go ahead and move on. Let's talk about matchups going into Week 12 of the fantasy football season. All right, here we go. So starting off with the top Somehow the Detroit Lions are still giving up the most points, even though Zeke really couldn't do much damage on the ground, but him and Tony Pollard got some work in the passing game, so both of them were fine. Again, the Detroit Lions are struggling against running backs in general, so Derrius Guice could potentially have himself a decent week here. Only time will tell, but again, the Detroit Lions, I don't know, I feel like they're better than they're advertised here. It's tough to say, but again, let me go ahead and look this up, okay? So in the last couple weeks, really, the last time they were really destroyed was against Josh Jacobs, who went for 120 yards and 2 touchdowns, right? Since then, David Montgomery didn't do much, only got 6 points, but Tarik Cohen got some work in the passing game, scored a touchdown. He got like 12 points, so there's 18. And then this past week, Ezekiel Elliott ended up scoring 2 touchdowns himself. Tony Pollard scored a touchdown himself and a 2-point conversion, which pretty much bought the value up. So, again, in terms of like yard per carry allowed, as of late, they've been better. Can they sustain that? Only time will tell, but I don't think the Washington Redskins offensive line is good enough to where Derrius Guice is going to have a huge 100-yard game. But I think he'll be decent. Anyway, moving on to Kansas City Chiefs. They are on a bye week. Moving on to Carolina Panthers, always a team that is giving up a lot of points. Even though they didn't give up too much to Brian Hill, that's because of a holding penalty. Another running back came in and stole a rushing touchdown on the goal line. That's unfortunate, but the Carolina Panthers take on Latavius Murray and Alvin Kamara. That combination is going to be very successful this week. And then we have the Green Bay Packers playing against whichever running back they decide to use in Santa Clara. It's so confusing between Tevin Coleman, Matt Breida, Raheem Mostert, Jeff Wilson, right? One can be injured, and the least likely player to have a big week is going to have that big week. Like, we had Matt Breida out this past week, but Tevin Coleman and Raheem Mostert, both of them who played almost the entire game. I think it was like a 65-35 split. Or sorry, was it about 65-35 split? Yeah, it was something like that between Coleman and Mostert. And then we have Jeff Wilson Jr. come in for literally one play, and score a 25-yard receiving touchdown and outscore both Mostert and Tevin Coleman. But, that's the 49ers for you. But either way, I think if Breida comes back, he should be good. Then you have the Bengals. Jaylen Samuels should be good against them if, in fact, James Conner is to be out this week. Then moving on, we have the Miami Dolphins matchup in which we have Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, who are licking their lips at the opportunity to run against this defense. That I think is going to be a very successful day for them. And then we have the Los Angeles Chargers, who are going on a bye week. The Washington Redskins, who will take on Bo Scarborough, who should be good. The Washington defense has not been good all season long, even with Jeff Driscoll. And this hodgepodge offense that they're putting together, I think they'll be fine. And then we have ourselves the Jacksonville Jaguars, who as of late have been giving up a lot of points to opposing running backs. Again, that 200 yards against the Colts wasn't a fluke. Carlos Hyde, 2 weeks back, I think, was it in London? Let me go ahead and look this up. Carlos Hyde, in week 9 in London, 160 yards, and he had that fumble on a 50-yard run that would have been a touchdown. So again, a lot of running backs are getting whatever they want to do, they can accomplish against this defense as of late. So Derrick Henry going to have a monster game, as he typically does against the Jaguars. Earlier this season, not as successful, but I think he'll be fine this time around because the quarterback change, obviously. And then we have the Arizona Cardinals also on a bye week. The Bears giving up a lot of points on the ground. We saw Todd Gurley run for over 100 scrimmage yards. That's a surprise. You don't really see Gurley do that anymore. But that's how bad the Bears are. Saquon hopefully is going to be great. And then we have Houston giving up a lot of points on the ground. Exactly my point of why Johnathan Williams is a decent pickup this week, because that offense is moving. The offensive line looks good. Jacoby Brissett's back. They should be fine, especially if, in fact, maybe we get Devin Funchess to play this week. All right, moving on to some of the tougher matchups. The Jets are pretty good on the ground, but I still think Josh Jacobs is going to be fine. Baltimore's good on the ground. That's the iffiness about Todd Gurley, whether or not he'll score, but I think Todd Gurley can at least fall into the end zone once. The Eagles stopping players, and they definitely did not allow anything to Sony Michel. Not too much of a surprise. They play against Chris Carson. Chris Carson's typically been good against very good defenses. So I expect Chris Carson to continue that streak and play very well against this Eagles front seven. Then we got the Colts playing against Carlos Hyde. That should be tough for him. The Steelers against Joe Mixon. This is one of those Joe Mixon weeks that I'm a little bit sketched out about, but hopefully he can find himself some decent RB2 value. And then we'll have the Vikings on a bye week. The Saints playing against Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey will be fine. Don't worry about him. The 49ers, and then the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the New England Patriots. We'll see how those go about. As of right now, the New England Patriots defense against running backs, I thought if in fact Jordan Howard was to have played last week, then he would have had a pretty good week. Unfortunately, he didn't play. Miles Sanders took majority of the work and didn't get too many touches on the ground either. So that's unfortunate, but all in all, we'll just have to wait and see what Zeke is able to do against this defense. All right, let's go ahead and move on. Let's talk about my top 36 running back rankings on the week, starting off with my RB1s. Number 1, Christian McCaffrey playing against the New Orleans Saints in Louisiana. So here's the thing. Christian McCaffrey, despite how good or bad his team is an unstoppable force. And I'm just looking at his stats right now. Oh, it's actually ridiculous. So through 10 weeks, Christian McCaffrey, was it 10 weeks? Why does it say 10 games played? We're going into week 12. What is this bogus stat? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, what the heck? Okay, interesting. Maybe I'm just freaking out. In 10 games played, Christian McCaffrey averages 27 points per game. The crazy part is that Dalvin Cook has played 11 games and has 40 points less. So with one extra game, he has 40 points less than Christian McCaffrey. It is insane how good this guy is, despite how bad Kyle Allen played on Sunday against the Atlanta Falcons, throwing 4 interceptions. Christian McCaffrey was still able to put up a 24-point half PPR performance. He's the best running back in the NFL in terms of fantasy, and it's not even close. So he's my number 1 going forward, and I don't think that's changing anytime soon. Moving on to number 2, Alvin Kamara. Same matchup. I expect, because of the fact of how bad the Carolina defense is in terms of giving up points to opposing running backs and how good Alvin Kamara looked last week. Alvin Kamara, sure, didn't get a rushing touchdown, even though they were trying to get it to him on the goal line. Did get a decent amount of rushing attempts, but his main value, again, is in the PPR game, catching balls out of the backfield. He exactly did that. He had a huge contribution in the receiving game. Beautiful. That's exactly what we want to see. And going forward, hopefully we see more of that. It's a very favorable matchup. I expect Alvin Kamara to be very good this week against Carolina. He's my number 2. Moving on to number 3, Saquon Barkley. Saquon plays against the Chicago Bears. Here's the thing about the Chicago Bears. I don't know if Mitchell Trubisky's going to play. I don't know if it's going to be Chase Daniel. But that organization is a mess right now, especially defensively, right? For a team that was the number 1 defense last year and, topped pretty much every single defensive statistic as the number 1 or at least a top 5 contributor at that specific stat. This is a defense that's fallen off. And I think Saquon Barkley and this team, they're going to have to establish the run similar to what exactly the Rams did. If Todd Gurley can have that kind of a game, I 100% believe so can Saquon Barkley. I think he's absolutely capable of doing so, and I think he's going to get it done. He's my number 3 on the week. Hopefully he's fully healthy, ready to go after a little bit of a shaky week 10. Moving on, let's talk about number 4, Derrick Henry. Shouldn't be a surprise. Derrick Henry's on this list for a reason. Derrick Henry takes on a very favorable matchup, a defense that is giving up a ton of points. They are playing in Tennessee. The offense looks far better than it has in weeks past, especially prior to the change of quarterback. Ryan Tannehill has really revitalized this offense, and Derrick Henry is still, sometimes he'll get 20-plus touches, sometimes he doesn't. Unfortunately, in those games that he's not getting those 20-plus touches, he's far less effective. But the ability to find the end zone and feed this guy the ball, they're not afraid of doing that. And they're going to continue to do that. I think this is another big game for Derrick Henry. Looking at his upcoming schedule, Jacksonville, Indianapolis, Oakland, Houston, New Orleans, a little tough, but this is one of the easier games. This and the Oakland matchup should be fun for him. All right, moving on. Let's talk about my number 5, Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb is he was the first running back, technically, in Week 12 to surpass 1,000 rushing yards. And then, Christian McCaffrey and Dalvin Cook caught him. But, again, Nick Chubb still getting a lot of work in the running game, even with Kareem Hunt in the backfield. Again, the last 2 weeks, 47 rushing attempts, which is absolutely beautiful. Averaging over 100 rushing yards with Kareem Hunt in the lineup. That's perfectly fine. We just got to see him score a touchdown. Again, he hasn't scored a rushing touchdown since Week 6 of the season. That is not great, but you play against Miami. And when you play against the Miami Dolphins, there is a lot of opportunity to do exactly that, find the end zone. And I expect the running game for the Cleveland Browns to really, help them get there. And to be honest, it's a home game too. It should be easy pickings. That's why I have Nick Chubb as my number 5 this week. Moving on to number 6, Josh Jacobs. Jacobs should be a good play. Again, the Jets defense playing a lot better than they have in weeks past. Really, I mean, the Jets turned around from that Miami beatdown and have been really picking on teams as of late. Now, is that a good thing? Sure. Their offense is rolling. Sam Darnold's looking good. This is almost identical to what they did last year. But we're not talking about the Jets. We're talking about how good Josh Jacobs is. Josh Jacobs should have had a rushing touchdown. Unfortunately, fumbled last week. But again, 20-plus touches, over 100 yards on the ground. That's what he's done that 4 times in the last 6 weeks, 100 rushing yards on the ground. This is an incredible running back. And as of right now, with the opportunity he's getting in the upcoming matchups that are on his slate, the Jets and the Kansas City Chiefs, I expect Josh Jacobs to continue to be leaned upon and be a big contributor this week. He's my number 6 running back. Moving on to number 7, Aaron Jones. Here's the thing about Aaron Jones. Now, the reason I mention Aaron Jones, even though they're playing the San Francisco 49ers, is because the 49ers, as of late, have gotten dominated by opposing running backs. Now, stay with me. Stay with me. Again, week 8, Christian McCaffrey, 14 touches, 117 yards on the ground, a touchdown, 4 catches, 38 yards. Kenyon Drake the week after, 15 touches, 110 on the ground, a touchdown, 4 catches, 52. Then the week after that, Chris Carson, 25 touches on the ground for 89 and a touchdown, 3 catches, 12 yards. Then Kenyon Drake once again, 16 touches, 67 yards, 6 receptions, 13 yards. In the last 4 weeks, 25.5, 26.2, 17.6, and 11. That's how many points they've given up to opposing running backs in the past month of the season. Is that great? Absolutely not. And I really do think Aaron Jones, Jamaal Williams, coming off of a bye week, should be pretty good against this 49ers team. And I think if anybody's going to be able to dominate, it's a guy like Aaron Jones. The guy is just gifted touchdowns. I mean, they literally feed him touchdowns. He has 14 touchdowns, just as much as Christian McCaffrey. And the funny thing is, Aaron Jones has less rushing yards than Lamar Jackson by 200 yards. Yeah. So again, Aaron Jones' value, touchdown dependent. But I expect him to, with his limited touches, still be a great play this week. He's my number 7. Number 8, Ezekiel Elliott. All right, here's my concern with Zeke. Zeke, how do I explain this? You play against the Patriots. The Patriots, I've been, suspicious of their defense, especially their run-stopping defense. This is a true test. If Ezekiel Elliott and this team, this offensive line, I know Lyle Collins went down with an injury because, Dak ran into the back of his knee, whatever. But I expect Ezekiel Elliott to at least be able to take advantage and hopefully, shine a light on this defense. Let's see exactly how bad they are, because this is a good upfront offensive line and a good running back. Sure, he doesn't look as good as he has in years past, but we're getting to a point that hopefully he can have another one of these breakout games. But I don't expect him to have a huge game. 2 touchdowns last week was a blessing for fantasy owners. This week, I'm not sure if Zeke's capable of doing something like that. If he's going to have to, it's going to be tough because the entire offense is going to have a tough time with this defense in general. All right, moving on. Let's talk about number 9, Le'Veon Bell. Here's my concerns about Le'Veon Bell. In the last couple weeks, he's been pretty good, right? He scores a touchdown, ends up scoring 15 plus fantasy points. That's exactly what we want, and we love it. We're eating it up. Last couple weeks has been great. 17 rushing attempts, 18 rushing attempts, 18 rushing attempts. Yard per carry average, not terrible, but could be better. Please get better. It's not great. It's not great at all. 3 yards per carry average, not great. But plays against Oakland, Cincinnati, Miami in the next 3 weeks. Another 3 easy matchups. If Le'Veon Bell continues to see the work that he's getting, whether it's on the goal line, in the passing game, and on the ground, he's going to continue to maintain his value because opportunity is everything, and especially in an offense that is at least in their groove right now and scoring, Le'Veon Bell is getting a lot of opportunity, and I think he's going to be able to act upon that this week against Oakland. He's my number 9 running back. Moving on to number 10, Chris Carson. Like I've mentioned before, Chris Carson somehow against these tougher matchups has been pretty good as a running back. I mean, when we go back and we look at what he did against Tampa Bay had not allowed a 100-yard rusher. Guess what? You know what? I'm going to run all over them. And then the week after, San Francisco, That's not a tough, easy defense to run against. Guess what? I'm going to run the ball 25 times, and I'm going to have 17.6 fantasy points on that defense. No one is going to deny me. This is a running back that as of late has been very good against tough matchups, and I understand the Philadelphia defense is tough, but I have a hard time sitting a guy like Chris Carson, especially in a week where he's, last week I didn't have him. I need my RB1 back, and I'm going to put him in my lineup no matter what. All right, moving on. Todd Gurley, the number 11 back on this week. Now, I do expect Todd Gurley to somewhat struggle. Obviously, the Baltimore defense, they have been a lot better in the last couple of weeks, but Todd Gurley getting the ball 25 times is very promising. Very much so promising. Sure, got over 100 total scrimmage yards, got himself a rushing touchdown, looked decent. But again, this was a very bad run-stopping defense. If, in fact, Todd Gurley struggles this week, I'm not going to be surprised. But a lot of it is going to have to rely upon the Los Angeles Rams feeding him the rock. Are they going to have the opportunity to do so? Whether Baltimore comes out and blows them out, it doesn't really matter. We saw Joe Mixon run the ball 30 times getting blown out. I just hope that Todd Gurley continues to get fed, and hopefully this offense, hopefully Jared Goff, maybe put in Bortles, man. I don't know. It's tough. The guy's terrible. He's so bad. He's a liability. They know that. That's why they have to feed Gurley. Hopefully they continue to do so. He's my number 11. Moving on to number 12. All right, so stay with me here, all right? This is one of the Andrew bold predictions of the week. I wish I had like a... Okay, here we go. Bold prediction of the week. Sony Michel will be a RB1 this week playing against the Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys defense, have they been good? Absolutely not. Have they been good against the run? No, they're terrible against the run. Now, what exactly does that mean? Well, that means Sony Michel should be a very good contributor and have a very good opportunity to put up some good numbers here. We saw Bo Scarborough run for, 11.5 fantasy points total. The week before, Dalvin Cook gashed this defense for over, 170 all-purpose yards. The week before that, Saquon Barkley, even with a bad game, was still decent. Still put up a decent amount of numbers. We've seen opposing offenses run the ball down this team's throat. And I think that's exactly what the New England Patriots want to do at this point in the season. So I think that's what they're going to do, and I think Sony Michel is going to be a big part of their game plan this week. He's my number 12. Moving on, let's talk about my RB2s on the week. Starting off with number 13, Mark Ingram. Mark Ingram has been incredible. Mark Ingram is a RB1 this season, mainly because of his touchdowns. 10 touchdowns total. That is insane. 2 receiving touchdowns. His first 2 receiving touchdowns as a Baltimore Raven this past week. Obviously, his yard per carry average could have been better, but again, if they're going to continue to use him in the passing game, that is beautiful. Because of all teams in the National Football League, this is a team that targets the running back position the least in the passing game. So it's a very big surprise that Mark Ingram got that boost. Obviously, he needed it. He got his points, perfectly fine. I still don't see him as an RB1, but that's mainly because the Rams matchup isn't easy. So we'll see how this defense approaches the Ravens offense, but I still think Mark Ingram is going to have RB2 value, and he always has the upside of scoring a touchdown. Again, 10 touchdowns in 10 games, that's good for me. He's going to be a 10-point play plus with the opportunity of getting more. All right, moving on, number 14, Leonard Fournette. Now, Leonard Fournette coming off the bye was a little quiet this past week. 8 rushing attempts. That is not good enough. That is not Leonard Fournette-esque. We saw Leonard Fournette dominate this year when he was given huge amounts of rushing attempts. 29, 23, 20, 29, 19. Those were the games in which Leonard Fournette was dominating up and down the field. We didn't see that. Where did that go? Did Leonard Fournette get hurt? Did Leonard Fournette just get forgotten? Did Nick Foles, wave him away and say, you know what, we're not running those plays? What happened? Because by all means, I would love to know. I don't understand why Leonard Fournette, I understand the score got out of hand. It became a, hey, we need to get back in the game by passing the ball kind of approach. But you got to start off the game by feeding him the ball and getting the run game going. Hopefully they can go ahead and do that in the coming weeks. Otherwise, that kind of a performance, even though he finished off with 9 points because of how much working on the passing game, could be a liability for him in the future because some of these matchups aren't as easy as others. All right, but either way, this week, playing against Tennessee Titans, again, not an easy matchup, but I expect them to be decent. Moving on, Joe Mixon. This is one of those weeks that Joe Mixon could struggle. Playing against Pittsburgh, not fun Not fun at all. But I think he'll be fine. Why? He's getting opportunity. Finally was the first running back to score a touchdown for the Cincinnati Bengals this season. We're getting... This offense looks better at times. They competed with the Raiders, and that's a playoff team. 10-17, that's not bad. Especially with how bad Finley is. That's not bad at all. Joe Mixon, hopefully, in the coming weeks, will get more opportunity. And as we've seen in the last couple weeks, he's getting that opportunity. 15 rushing attempts, 86 rushing yards against the Oakland defense. Sure, they're not great, but it's trending in the right direction. I expect him to be decent. Hopefully, he can get some more work in the passing game. Maybe we can get away, with not feeding the ball to Giovanni Bernard here and there. But Mixon, he's a decent play. All right, moving on. Number 16, Phillip Lindsay. Lindsay gets to take on the Buffalo Bills. I've always said the Buffalo Bills defense in the last couple weeks have been awful. Phillip Lindsay is a decent running back when he is given the opportunity to be said, decent running back. This past week, 16 carries, out-carried. I think he doubled the amount of attempts that Royce Freeman had. As such, it should be. That should be the case every single time. Hopefully this week, it could be some weather conditions, obviously, but I expect it to be a run-heavy game with potential rain. So I think, if they're going to lean on Phillip Lindsay, I want him in my lineup, especially against that kind of a defense. All right, moving on. Number 17, Matt Breida, playing against the Green Bay Packers. This is a defense that has given up a lot of points to opposing running backs this season. They, at times, can be abused at that point in the game. If you're going to run heavily on them, it's a pretty good approach into at least dominating the clock and keeping Aaron Rodgers off the field. As of right now, if Matt Breida is to come back, I want him in my lineup. I don't really want to touch any of the other guys. I don't feel confident enough in a Coleman or a Mostert or a Jeff Wilson to get the job done. I expect Matt Breida as a tougher runner, a more north-south runner to get it done as of right now, as my number 17 back. Moving on to number 18, Jaylen Samuels, playing against Cincinnati, a team that gives up a lot of points to opposing running backs. Jaylen Samuels, if in fact he is the starting running back of this team with James Conner out and Trey Edmonds probably behind him, Jaylen Samuels could get a lot of work, similar to how he did the other night. Ends up getting a touchdown in the game, ends up getting a lot of work in the passing game. Sure, that team was struggling last week. Hopefully we'll be better against this lesser team like the Bengals. Jaylen Samuels should be good. Moving on to number 19, Jordan Howard. Now, Jordan Howard had a stinger. If he is not available to play, so be it. You can wash him off this number 19 slot, and we could put somebody else at the number 36 and move everybody up one slot, or we can move up, Miles Sanders accordingly. But I expect him to be fine. Hopefully he's better than he was last week. Hopefully he is approved to make contact and practice this week. If he is not, we'll talk about it. We'll see where that's trending, and we'll decide. But I expect him to have a good week if he plays against Seattle. I don't think Seattle's defense is that good, and I think Jordan Howard could have a very good opportunity of having a decent performance here this week. Moving on, number 20, Bo Scarborough. You're playing against the Redskins. The Redskins don't really have a defense. At times, they cannot stop a soul, and that shouldn't be a surprise. And I think Bo Scarborough, after what he was able to produce last week, nearly, I don't know. I mean, it was decent yard per carry average. But I think what he was able to produce and, what he brings to this offense can probably be relied upon as the weeks progress. And I think going into this week should be a pretty good pickup and play. All right, let's see here. Number 21, Johnathan Williams, plays on Thursday night, coming off a really big week for himself, over 140 total yards, from scrimmage. Great game. Is going to be the starting running back of this team this week. Should be a decent play against the Texans. The Texans team that, got absolutely washed last week by the Baltimore Ravens. 40 points on their head, and it was brutal. But I still think, Johnathan Williams, Jacoby Brissett, they should be able to get the job done. The issue I have is there isn't really a wide receiver one. Without T.Y. Hilton there really isn't anybody. So hopefully they're going to continue to lean upon a running game, and Johnathan Williams can get the job done. Moving on to 22, Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt's been great. Dude has seen a lot of targets, 9 targets, 8 targets in the last 2 weeks. Was that 17 targets in the last 2 weeks? That's ridiculously good. And I think the amount of opportunity he's getting and the amount of production that he puts forth isn't, going to affect what, a guy like Nick Chubb does. I think they're mutually exclusive in terms of their production and their opportunity. One is a, ground-heavy guy. One is a pass-heavy guy. And I think that's beautiful. And I think going forward, especially into his Miami matchup, I think Kareem Hunt could potentially have his touchdown week here. He's a solid RB2 in my eyes. He's my number 22 on the week. Moving on to number 23, David Montgomery. If in fact, David Montgomery's ankle is getting better, he's healthy, this is a very good matchup. We have the New York Giants defense that really, again, another one of these teams that can't stop a soul. This could be a very good game for David Montgomery and or Tarik Cohen. We've seen running backs in the past. I think they played each other last year, right? Late in the season, I think it was a matchup between the Giants and the Bears. I think it was Chase Daniels at quarterback too. Either way, regardless, I expect David Montgomery to be decent. He hasn't been good in the last couple of weeks. That's unfortunate. But again, he was dealing with his ankle injury that kind of bugged him this week. And he played against a tougher matchup. So hopefully we can get back on track, find him in the red zone. Obviously, a lot of his production is going to predominantly be relied upon scoring a touchdown. And that's what we haven't seen from this team. Again, this team is not scoring a lot of points. They're averaging about 14 points per game, not even in the last couple weeks, which is rough, but hopefully they can, get back on track. We'll see what happens here for the Chicago Bears. Moving on to number 24, another starting running back, a guy that, he scored a garbage time touchdown. Who would be kidding, right? Like Carlos Hyde, that's a garbage time touchdown. Only ran the ball 9 times, but it was a lot of game script heavy play. If in fact this is a closer game, he'll get more usage in my opinion, and could be of service, get a goal line touchdown potentially. I don't think he's that bad of a running back. A lot of people don't like Carlos Hyde, but he's been decent at times. He gets a good amount of work on the ground. Just looking at prior to week 11, 21 touches, 26 touches, 12, and 19. He gets a lot of touches on the ground. That is a lot of value, and that's why I like Carlos Hyde going forward. All right, moving on. Let's talk about my RB3s on the week before we close out today's video. Starting off with number 25, Derrius Guice, playing against the worst defense against the run, against running backs in general. They play against the Detroit Lions. Now, from what I saw from Adrian Peterson and where Chris Thompson currently stands in terms of his injury, I think Derrius Guice, like I mentioned on that Hidden Gems video, is trending towards potentially taking this spot full-time and being the number 1 RB for this team and carrying this team in the next couple weeks into very favorable matchups. I'm hopefully going to, strike this one and be correct. But I think I have him at number 25 because I'm just being a little precautious. Again, last week I said I want to see him play. I want to see what he's capable of doing, and then we can determine it from there. But as of right now, from what I saw him do and the opportunity that he was sort of given, I kind of want to sit back and still put him as a flex start. I don't want to have him as an RB2. If you're desperate, you have a bye week, sure. RB2, perfectly fine. But again, as of right now, just a little sketched out. 25 is perfectly fine. He's still going to be a good back. That's where I'll leave him. All right, moving on. 26, Latavius Murray. I think this is going to be a week in which the New Orleans Saints run all over the Carolina Panthers. I think Latavius Murray gets a lot of work. He saw 10-plus touches last week, and I think those 10-plus touches against a team like the Carolina Panthers with this offensive line could lead to a very good amount of yards, enough to where Latavius Murray could be a flex option, and that's where I kind of see him this week. I know a lot of people probably don't see him as that, but I do think this is very much so a one-sided matchup in which the Saints are just running all over this defense, and I think Latavius Murray can be a very good contributor in that spot. All right, moving on. Devin Singletary, number 27, playing against the Denver defense. Like I kind of anticipated with Dalvin Cook, Denver's defense doesn't really give much on the ground. Not really much of a surprise. When Dalvin Cook showed up with 11 touches for 26 yards, I wasn't surprised at all. But when you have Devin Singletary playing against that defense, this is not as good of a running offensive line. Devin Singletary is going to have to rely upon a lot of receiving work, and that's why I have him at 27. I'm a little sketched out about the potential of him versus this defense, so I'm just going to leave him at an RB3 flex play this week, and in PPR formats, he probably has his most value, but even then, he doesn't get enough targets to where I'm head over heels, trying to start this guy instantly at my flex spot. I'm just, I'm not convinced about the matchup as of right now. All right, let's go ahead and move on. Number 28, Jamaal Williams. Jamaal Williams pretty much plays 50-50 with Aaron Jones. In terms of touches, they pretty much go 50-50. So if Aaron Jones is to get a touchdown stolen, like he has in the past a lot in the receiving game, Jamaal Williams is going to be the guy to fill in there and have himself a good week. So I expect this team, this Green Bay Packers team, to push the 49ers to the limits and have a good game here. And I think Jamaal Williams will be a good contributor as my number 28 running back. Moving on to 29. Speaking of that matchup, we have Tevin Coleman. Tevin Coleman's a little tricky. Unless Tevin Coleman's getting a lot of work in the passing game, or a decent amount of work in the passing game, he's just an running back. Since that huge week, that 36.8 fantasy week, the dude has been 4.6, 9.2, 7.7. Not exciting. And unless he scores a touchdown, won't be exciting. That's why I have him at 29, despite how good the matchup is. Moving on to number 30, James White. James White playing against the Dallas Cowboys again. They're not going to be great. I expect Sony Michel to be really, really good. And because I expect Sony Michel to be so good, I think I had to move James White just a little bit down the pecking order here, just because I don't think he's going to see as many snaps and or touches potentially because of this matchup. So James White sits at my number 30 spot. Still has value because of his PPR contributions and his opportunity here and there, but still, I'm just a little, we'll just leave him here at 30. I think he's safe here as like a 8-point running back and a half PPR. Moving on, let's talk about 8 to 10 points. Let's put it like that. Number 31, Miles Sanders. Like I mentioned before, if Jordan Howard's out, we can go ahead and push Miles Sanders above a couple of these guys in terms of value, but we're going to have to wait and see exactly where that is or where that stands in terms of injuries, in terms of, where Jordan Howard is, in terms of, Jesus Christ, his stinger. I was looking for the word and I couldn't find it, so I just kept going in circles. Regardless, Miles Sanders wasn't that good this past week, but again, the Giants, the Patriots, the New England Patriots, they look good defensively. So as of right now, Miles Sanders, still one of these flex options, needs to have a big play in order to be a big contributor, or he needs a touchdown. So as of right now, at 31, that's a safe spot. All right, moving on, 32, Ronald Jones. Ronald Jones against the Saints. Ronald Jones against the Falcons. The Falcons defense has been pretty good. And does it scare me? Sure. That's why I have Ronald Jones down here. Ronald Jones, for some reason, is getting, even though they're like, yeah, you know what, he's a starting running back. It's like, no. I cannot believe how wish-washy this entire offense is. He had 4 rushing attempts last week. Didn't get any work in the passing game. It's just a joke. And if they're going to treat him as a joke, then I'm not going to really treat him with much value. So he'll sit at my number 32 this week. My number 33, Brian Hill. I know they're saying, Devontae Freeman is trending in the right direction. I think Brian Hill will probably play this week. Similar in that same matchup, I think running against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is not an easy feat. And it's not going to be something that you can just walk in and get done. So Brian Hill is going to have to get some PPR work under his belt. Otherwise, he's going to be another one of those 4-point performances. Moving on, Tarik Cohen, been really good in the last couple weeks. Hopefully, will continue on that trend in catching a bunch of passes out of the backfield. As of right now, I'm confident that in a full PPR, he would be higher, but in a half PPR, obviously, we're relying upon the game script to kind of go in Tarik Cohen's direction. But, David Montgomery not getting used a lot because of his injury could continue to rise Tarik Cohen's stock. Moving on, 35, Royce Freeman. Again, if Phillip Lindsay is going to be as good, Royce Freeman is going to see some work. He could potentially find himself in the end zone against the Buffalo Bills. It's a good matchup. That's why I have him at 35. And I have 36 as Duke Johnson. Now, you might be thinking Duke Johnson hasn't done anything in weeks, Andrew. I don't know what it is. But I feel like in this short week, Texans versus Colts, something about Duke Johnson kind of is resonating with me. I'm getting a feeling that we could see a Duke Johnson game in which he scores a touchdown or has a decent week, but you just have to get lucky. That's literally what it is. Like his best performances, 11, 12, 11, 16, they come few and far between. And when he does have those performances, it's because he has some, decent amount of work in the passing game. I think if in fact this game becomes a shootout, which it's kind of leaning towards, Duke Johnson's going to get more work out of this backfield and hopefully be a decent play. As of right now, he's my number 36 back. And that's my top 36 running back rankings going into Week 12 of the fantasy football season. I want to thank everybody for watching. If you haven't yet already, click that subscribe button, join the community. And until next time, I appreciate every single one of you supporting the channel. And I'll talk to you guys tomorrow for Wide Receiver Wednesday. Again, thank you. Leave a like button. Click the like button, please. Do it right now. Right now. If you're listening, right now. Unless you've already done it. If you've done it, I love you. Perfect. I'll see you guys. Peace.